Hello there, YouTube and YouTubers. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to draft a SilverQuill deck, because I think you too can get to 7 wins in Arena. SilverQuill is of course the black-white, somewhat beat-down deck of Strixhaven, and the deck is very easy to draft if you know what you're doing. So let's go and take a look. Let's first take a look at some of the higher concepts of what a SilverQuill deck should look like. So first up, you're going to almost always be a beatdown deck when you're playing a SilverQuill draft deck, which means that in the Strixhaven format, SilverQuill will very often be the deck that is attacking. To ensure that you can be the aggressor, what you need to do is be a creature-based deck, so many of your cards will be creatures. Your cards should be low drops, so generally speaking, your cards should be low mana. Mana efficiency is something that is going to be beneficial for you, but the cards themselves also enable mana efficiency. And one other thing which is quite strong about SilverQuill is that the learn cards in your deck will be quite cheap. They will be 1 or 2 mana to get a lesson from your sideboard. Whereas the other colors and the other colleges will often need to get their lessons for 3 or maybe even more mana from their sideboard. There are a few minor mechanics in SilverQuill, which are flying, +1/+1 counters, and Inklings. Inklings, of course, already being flying creatures, they are the 2/1 flying creatures you can get from many of the cards in the set. Whereas the +1/+1 counters and the flying will enable you to do combat profitably. Let's go and take a look at some of the best cards of SilverQuill. First up we have the Inkling Summoning. It's going to be your most important to get one or maybe even multiple of for your SilverQuill deck. If you do have multiple Inkling Summonings, the value of your learn cards will go up by quite a bit. 2/1 flyings in this format are actually kind of real creatures, even if you're paying 3 mana for them. And the capability of getting a creature from your sideboard just by casting a learn card is very strong, so keep in mind that the Inkling Summon is going to be your most important card to pick up. Then, second, we have the Lash of Malice. It's a 1 mana card that can either be used to kill a creature post-blocking, so you attack with a 2/2, they block with a 4/4, and then post-blocking you say, hey, how about I just finish off that 4/4 on your side. It's not a very profitable trade, but it's something that can be done with a Lash of Malice. But its main mode, of course, is going to be used on a 2 mana 2/2 on your opponent's side. For 1 mana, you'll be able to remove one of their blockers, and you'll be able to attack again. One of the, well, maybe not so very much hidden modes is that a Lash of Malice can also be used on one of your own creatures to increase its power, making sure that you can do those last few points of damage to get to lethal, or just, get a few more points of damage in on your opponent's blocker. Next up is a card that maybe reads not that tremendously good, but it is very important for your SilverQuill deck. It's the Eager First Year. It's a 2 mana 2/2 when you cast an instant or sorcery it gets a bit stronger. It's a very easy way of getting some extra points of damage in when you're casting some of your other learn cards. It's also just a very sturdy card. I mean, 2 mana 2/2 in limited is oftentimes already good enough, but it costing only 1 colored mana and it doing so much with instants and sorceries makes it a quite good card. Then next up we have the Guiding Voice. It's a 1 mana card that gets a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures, triggers of course, Magecraft for some of your other cards, and also lets you get those Inkling Summonings from the sideboard, or some of your other lessons. The Guiding Voice is maybe the best or maybe the second best learn card in the entire set, and should definitely not be underestimated. It does exactly what you need in an aggressive deck. It increases your combat capabilities while also giving you some sort of inevitability or letting you get a silver bullet from the sideboard. Inevitability, of course, being the 2/1 flyings, while silver bullets are more often the destroy target permanent on your opponent's side. Next up we have another creature, it's the SilverQuill Pledge Mage. It's quite easy to cast in your SilverQuill deck, of course, it needing 2 colored mana, but the hybrid mana makes sure that you'll always be able to cast it on turn 3. It works very well with both the cards that say Learn or the cards that say Lesson in your deck. Lessons always being instants or sorceries, but even your Learn cards will very often be instants or sorceries, so it will very often have Flying or Lifelink. Both modes are actually quite important, because sometimes when you're the beatdown, you're going to tell your opponent, okay, I'm going to beat you down by turn 6 or maybe 7, then your opponent might be responding with, well, I'll try to stop you from doing that, while at the main time trying to beat you down in 6. Lifelink is of course a very good way to stop your opponent from racing you, while at the same time the flying is a good way of getting damage through when your opponent is trying to, stop you from racing them. Combat Professor is the last card I wanted to talk to you about here on the best in class list. There was another card I wanted to talk with you about somewhat as well. It was the Study Break. Study Break, of course, being a very good way of getting the last few points of damage through and also getting lessons. But the Combat Professor, I think, is slightly more important because your SilverQuill deck really needs all the creatures it can get. And even the +1/+0 Vigilance the Combat Professor gives is a very good way of dealing some damage to your opponent while preventing some damage take. In some situations, the +1 side of the Combat Professor will be more important than the Vigilance side because it allows your creature, which otherwise could not attack, to suddenly attack, and giving your opponent a choice. Well, would you like to trade your, say, 3 or 4 mana creature for my 2 mana creature, which is of course not beneficial for them, or would you like to take 3 damage? In other situations where your opponent is trying to stop you from racing them while racing themselves, the Vigilance will be very important. Combat Professor having flying, of course, is a very big upside to the card, because there are some synergies to having flying in SilverQuill. Here we have what I would say are your most important lessons to learn in this format. We already talked about the Inkling Summoning, your most important lesson, but if you do have an Inkling Summoning, straight up after it, you're also going to be looking for Expanded Anatomy. The option to have your lesson card find either a way to get ahead through flying or stay ahead through Expanded Anatomy, maybe even dealing lethal damage or turning one of your not so very relevant cards into a very strong card, is going to give a very good basis for your learn cards. Necrotic Fumes is, in my opinion, the best way of getting rid of pesky blockers on your opponent's side. There are other options of doing this in the format, but the Necrotic Fumes is somewhat mana efficient, and it also doesn't have the downsides of some of the other ways of removing permanents on your opponent's side. But Necrotic Fumes, in my opinion, is best, but having some way of removing creatures or maybe other sorts of permanents on your opponent's side is going to be important, so pick up at least one of the variants there exist. And last up we have the Spirit Summoning, which is of course the, widely regarded as the least important summoning card. The other cards are more often seen as much better, but if you only have 0 or maybe 1 Inkling Summoning, it's going to be quite strong to at least have the option to pick up a Spirit Summoning if there is nothing else left in your sideboard which makes creatures. So Spirit Summoning is sort of a backup plan for your sideboard. Last up, here we have a SilverQuill deck that I recently went 7-1 with in one of my drafts. As you can see, there are no rares or very special uncommons in this deck that you would otherwise not expect to see in one of your drafts. So you too should also be able to draft a deck like this. What can you see and what can you learn from this deck? Well, as it says already, there are quite a lot of creatures in this deck. If you're drafting a SilverQuill deck, I want you to draft 13 or more creatures. Then apart from that, it's important that the spells and the instants and sorceries you're casting all either say creatures or target creature on it. When you do this, you will enable your own combat, so cards you should not be playing are cards that do not interact creatures in some way. What's also very important is that this deck, the SilverQuill deck, is supposed to get ahead before your opponent can start stabilizing and start using their card advantage cards. So to enable that, you will need very many 2-drops, say 5 or more. One of the things that will very much help your SilverQuill deck is that many of the 2-drops from SilverQuill are high quality. A last interesting thing I want you to think about is that card advantage and inevitability. Inevitability, of course, being I will win this game no matter what in the end, even if we continue to, say, turn 22. Those two concepts, the card advantage, inevitability, are not that important for your SilverQuill deck. It's all about winning before your opponent has completely stabilized. Sometimes winning, of course, means I put you to 5 life and now you are in a position where you need to make very detrimental decisions to stay alive. While in other situations, winning will literally mean I have won the game because your life is at 0 or less. If you use all of these concepts I've written down here on the left of me, the many creatures, cards should interact with creatures, have very many 2-drops, and don't worry too much about card advantage or inevitability. I think you too can get to a 7-win draft deck. I truly hope that this video has been either to some help to you or has been entertaining. If you did like the video, please leave a like on the video, and if you wanted to comment about something I missed or something you would have definitely wanted me to discuss here, please leave a comment below. And if you just want to see more videos about Magic the Gathering, have a look around on the channel. There will be videos coming out about the other 4 colleges very soon, so expect to see them in the future. But for now, I hope to see you in another video, or I hope to see you around.